Okay, and just make sure to speak up if you can. Okay, what's your full name?
William Morgan Whiteford,
When were you born?
December 9th, 1934.
Where were you born?
Wilkinsburg, Pennsylvania.
What were your parents' names?
William and Margaret Fry. Whiteford, I mean,
Yeah.
not Fry. Fry's my mother's maiden name.
What were the names of your siblings?
My siblings,
Yeah.
my brother Jim Barr, he was my half brother. To my mother was his mother.
What was your childhood like?
Testy. My mother and dad didn't have a good relationship, so I just remember my earliest days that I remember as living with my mother with my grandmother and grandfather and my Uncle Ed, who was an alcoholic. My grandfather was a policeman. He retired at 76 years old. So they were wonderful. And then I remember when I was a baby, my mom and dad getting back together. I can remember it. I was still in my crib at that time. And after that, went back to my grandmother's again. And then my dad came along when I was 7, and we moved to with my mom and dad to Akron, Ohio. And
How old were you then?
I was 7 years old. That was 1941 when the war started. My dad went to work for Goodyear Aircraft and building planes for the Navy. And that was a testy time too, because my dad was a womanizer. And so I had to live with that, knowing what was going on when I was pretty young.
Okay. What was your relationship with your half-brother like?
Very good. He was wonderful, wonderful. And served in Patton's Army in World War II. Fought in the Battle of the Bulge. He was 5-star. And he came back from the Army and took his money that he got from the government. I can't think of the name of it right now. And
The GI Bill.
GI Bill, and went to tailoring school. Became a very, very good tailor, and never had any money. Had 5 kids, and pretty poor his entire life. So he was wonderful, though. Just absolutely loved him.
How old was he when he passed, and when did he pass away?
He died 1 week before he was going to retire. At 65 years old, he died of a heart attack.
When was that?
65, let's see. That would have been in the 80s. Yeah,
Okay.
1988.
Okay. When did your parents pass away?
I'm sorry?
When did your parents pass away?
My mother died at 1986, and my dad died in 1983.
Okay. Growing up in your home, what was a family value that was stressed to you?
None. I hate to give that as an answer, but it's the truth. I was on my own. I lived on my own from the time I was an early teenager, and basically did what I wanted to do. My life was really controlled by myself. My parents never controlled my life. And never seemed to have any desire to.
Mm-hmm. How was affection expressed to you growing up?
My mother and I were very close, and we got along really, really well. I deeply loved my mom, and my dad, of course, told you about his history. It wasn't that good. And even while I was in high school, he was still a womanizer, so he and I did not get along very well because of his disrespect for my mother.
Despite all that, is there something that you looked up to him for?
Not really.
Hmm.
Sorry to say.
Mm-hmm. What was one of the best childhood memories that you can recall?
High school. Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
What made it that way?
Well, I had two cars at the same time, and
What were those?
Studebaker, 1932 Studebaker President, and a 1941 black Ford coupe.
How did you get
Two
those?
fantastic cars. Well, I was working, and so I earned my own money.
Doing what?
At greenhouse, wholesale greenhouse, very big. We had like 10 greenhouses, and so loved that job. So great boss, great place to work.
We talked about a little bit already your childhood and some of the difficulties, but is there something that sticks out in your mind that was a difficult moment as a child that you overcame?
I think living with one parent for the time I did, and also growing up and living with a parent that wasn't really a good parent to me or a good husband to his wife.
Okay, so moving on from your family and your childhood to more existential questions.
Okay,
What do you think happens to us when we die?
go to heaven. If you're a Christian, if you believe in God and our Lord Jesus Christ.
What's one interpersonal skill every child should master as they become an adult?
Respect.
What mentor had the biggest impression on you?
Dick Glantz at Quaker Oats. He was executive vice president.
And what about that relationship had an impression on you?
At the time I worked for him, he was president of Pet Foods Division. I was vice president of purchasing. And he used to come to my office probably 3 times a week and say, "Billy boy, you ready to go to coffee?" And he and I would go to coffee. And in my work experience, I was extremely cognizant of cost because of my job in purchasing, but I just had the ability and the talent to recognize things to reduce cost. And so he and I would go to coffee, and I would discuss with him something major that I wanted to do in reducing costs. And he always said, "Let's do it." And he backed me up, even though many times in the plants I had a lot of pushback. Dick always was behind me and supported me. And Quaker Pet Food Division at Quaker, they reviewed all our businesses every year, and the Pet Food Division was always on the chopping block as one that they were looking to get rid of. And to make a very long story short, I cost reduced the division to the point that it became so profitable that we ended up buying Gaines Pet Food from General Foods, and literally almost doubled the size of our pet food division.
Let's go back to your life after high school. You graduate high school. What happens?
Went in the Navy 7 or 8 months after I graduated.
What year did you graduate high school?
1953 I graduated.
So 54, you enter the Navy.
February 54, I went in the Navy.
Where were you stationed?
Initially in Bainbridge, Maryland. Then I was assigned to the USS Heminger, a destroyer escort. I was on that for a year or so. Then I went to the destroyer, USS Soley. Volunteered for submarine duty. Did that to try to get the hazardous duty pay earn a little extra money to go to college when I got out of the Navy.
How much extra was that pay? Do you remember?
$80 a month.
$80 a month, bringing your total pay to what?
Oh, $2,000 a year, $2,500. I still have my records. I have my IRS, my income tax forms back to then. So it's pretty cool when you look at what I made.
Yeah. And where were you looking to go to college?
Penn State.
And
I went to Penn State then after I got out of the Navy. I went to work at Quaker Oats, which was across the street from my mother's home. And I worked there until I went to college. And at that time, I was married with Sina and Carla, with 2 children, and Christine at some point there was born. I don't remember exactly when, but I went to Penn State in New York, at the York campus. And while I was going to work there, I was working 2 jobs first year. In the second year, I was working 2 jobs, and I got a call one afternoon from Joe DeFilippi, who was the department manager when I worked at Quaker before I went to college, and asked me if I wanted a part-time job. And I went in and talked to him, and I took that. So I had 3 part-time jobs all at once, and carrying 17 hours of electronic engineering and electrical engineering rather. And I got so good at the job, he offered me full-time, and that's when I quit Penn State. Took a calculated risk that I could make something of myself, and the rest is history.
And what year did you leave Penn State?
About 1961. It was in my second year.
Okay, let's go back a little bit to the Navy. What was your experience in the Navy like?
Fantastic. I loved it.
How so?
Loved being in the Navy. Just loved everything about the Navy and the thrill of it, and particularly being in the submarine service. It was so cool. Yeah, it was a great experience.
Where's somewhere that you got to go that you liked?
Caribbean on the destroyer escort. I went to on the submarine, Europe, a number of places in Europe, and also we took naval recruits from Annapolis with the Chesapeake Bay, and would give them a chance to ride on a submarine and see how we dive. And we do that a number of times, and that was pretty cool too.
Yeah. Okay, so you begin work, you exit Penn State, you have 3 kids by this point.
Yep.
Then what? Where are you?
Then I went to work at was Quaker full time. That was at a plant in Sharmanstown, Pennsylvania, and bought a home then for $10,500, a 3-bedroom home, beautiful, brand new. It had just been built, and so I worked there for 5 years in the plant. Had a call from a guy in Chicago in packaged material purchasing, asked me if I was interested in joining a company in Chicago, and 2 other departments found out about him coming to see me, and they both came to see me as well. I was offered 3 jobs in Chicago at the same time. So I had my choice between commodity purchasing, packaged material purchasing, and production planning. And I thought about it, and which is my best opportunity for getting ahead, and I said commodities, and that's what I chose.
And you worked?
So I came to Chicago, worked in the commodity purchasing department as manager of byproduct sales, which was selling all the byproducts off of all of our our mills where we produced products.
How long did you work? Was that at the Chicago Mercantile Exchange?
That was in Chicago Merchandise Mart.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how long did you work in that building?
Almost 20 years.
Okay.
Yeah, 20 years.
And you remained with Quaker Oats
Until 1987, I left. And I was vice president of commodity purchasing for the company at the time. And they hired a guy from the outside to come in as to run the entire purchasing department, including packaging and machinery and everything. And it was obvious from the first week he was there that he saw me as a threat, and we did not get along, to say the least. And I ended up, that was in January, and I left the company in November of that year. I didn't want to work for him anymore.
1987. I was 5.
That was 1987.
Okay.
Yeah, 87.
And that was.
So then I was unemployed for about a year. And Pete Rhodes, who was my boss at Quaker, he was one of the presidents of the Pet Foods division I worked for when I was VP of purchasing. And he went to work for Griffith Foods. That's their name today. It was Griffith Laboratories. And he was president there. Called me one day and asked me if I was ready to go back to work. Had dinner with him that night and accepted a job, and I was there for 8 years and ended up as vice president of purchasing for North America.
When did you fully retire from Griffith?
62 years old. That would have been 34, 96, 1996.
Okay. And you've stayed in Chicago for the most part from that point. When did you buy your home in Florida?
Chicago and Florida, 21 years ago.
21 years
Yeah.
ago.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you, let's jump backwards to meeting Grandma. How did you meet Grandma?
Home from the Navy on a weekend on Liberty, and a friend of mine called me and asked me if I wanted to go to the dance at the YMCA, and I said no, I don't want to go. And he said, oh, come on, we don't have anything else to do. So I grudgingly said yes, and loved to dance, danced a lot. So he and I went to the dance, and I saw this lady on the floor, and she was there with this big guy who I eventually found out he was a tackle for her high school in Harrisburg. The guy was a giant. So anyway, I gulped and went and asked her to dance. And it turned out she wasn't on a date or anything. So anyway, we had a couple dances and asked her if she wanted to go to the movies. The next night, I took her to a movie that I had seen. Actually, I was on leave. I wasn't home for Liberty because I was home for 10-day leave, and this was going to be the third time I saw the same movie. I didn't tell her, but I'm going to see the third movie because she wanted to see it. So we went to the movie, and the rest was history.
How long did you date before you asked her to marry you?
I commuted home, hitchhiked, and got rides home 37 times in 1 year before we got married from Norfolk. And I don't know how far it is. I think it's about 300 or 400 miles.
Wow.
So I used to do that, and we ended up getting married in 11 months.
What year were you married?
1956.
56.
Yeah.
And Grandma passed away in
2005.
2005.
Yeah, 49 years we were married.
Yeah. 4 kids.
4 kids.
Okay. What is your greatest achievement, accomplishment, victory in a 49-year relationship? What's something that you're proud of?
With Grandma, you mean?
Yeah.
You're talking Grandma?
Yeah.
Well, I think we built a pretty good life together when we were pretty we had a pretty good life.
What's something you learned about yourself through that, and what's something you learned about her?
What I learned about her is how caring she was, and how just everybody that she was dealt with, particularly in our family, how much she looked after them and how much she wanted to make sure that they were successful.
And all that commuting, going back and forth, what drove you to do that? What did you see in her that made you want to drive back and forth 37 times or hitchhike?
She was adorable.
Yeah.
She was absolutely adorable. I mean, that's all it was. She's just an adorable young lady.
Yeah. Huh. What was your favorite thing about her?
Boy, there were so many things that are good about her.
Well, give me several then.
Loved her cooking. I think of her cooking all the time, and cooking and baking. She was phenomenal.
Yeah.
Yep.
What about her?
Very devout Christian. Very, very devout.
Yeah. Personality, character. What stands out to you about her character and personality?
Oh, she was so energetic, and I mean, she was like had her finger plugged in a light socket. I mean,
You had a nickname for her.
She had so much energy.
Yeah. What was her nickname?
Oh my gosh.
Little Dynamite.
Little Dynamite, yeah. Little Dynamite. Yeah. In fact, named the boat in Delavan after her, Little Dynamite.
And a license plate, if I recall. There was a license plate that said, I believe on her Volvo station wagon it said Little Dynamite.
I remember that. That's interesting.
Yeah. I think that was indicative of her personality.
Yeah.
Okay, so kids are out of the house. You're with grandma. After the kids leave the house, what was your life like?
Really good. Yeah, it was really good. We traveled a lot. I mean, we went to Europe every year on vacation, and I've been to Europe over 35 times between business and vacations, but we really had a lot of fun traveling.
Yeah, let's go. That brings something to mind for me. Let's go backwards again, and I'm sorry I'm jumping around, but
okay.
Raising 4 kids, what was that like? What was it like to be a father to 4 kids? Answer that any way you want. As they're growing up.
I loved having my kids. I really did. It was so much fun.
You liked being a father?
Oh yeah, loved being a father. Absolutely loved it. Yeah.
Yeah. How were the kids overall growing up?
Had good kids. And sometimes they test you, but not too often. Overall, I'd say I had very good kids. Never really gave me what I would ever consider a really rough time that is memorable to me.
If you could, no parent really gets it right their first time. If you could go back, do parenting all over again, what's one thing you would do differently?
Well, I was so busy. Your grandmother really is the one that in my opinion, raised them. I'm putting myself down by saying that, but she really did the majority of raising them. I think I would have probably been more involved in their schooling than I was, and that probably is the biggest one. Other than that, though, I think I was a pretty good dad.
Yeah.
I think my kids would say that.
Yeah. They all get married, have kids of their own. What's the best part of being a grandfather?
Sitting back and observing the kind of parents your children are. I think that's the biggest one, is to see how they've conducted themselves as parents.
Sure. Let's go through each kid, top to bottom. Let's go with one. What your favorite personality trait or thing about each of the kids is? Your 4.
Personality trait. That's a hard one.
It is a hard one.
If I take Matthew, his personality, he's so focused on business. I mean, that's his family and his business. And he said that to me. He said, that's my life, my family, my business.
Yeah.
And he's really devoted to both.
You admire his focus in that way.
Yes, I do. But I think maybe sometimes a little too focused on those two elements. But overall, yes, I respect him for it.
Okay. Aunt Cena, same question.
And Aunt Cena,
and think about this from childhood
I gotta
to
stop and think about it.
Yeah, from childhood to now, growing up.
Well, she's very caring, and you know it's very obvious that how she has always thought about her siblings, how she's thought about me and her mother. I think she was a very, very good daughter, and I know as far as I'm concerned, she had a deep respect for me at one time, and it really showed.
Mm-hmm.
And she's very caring for people in general.
Okay. My mom, Carla, same question.
Yeah. Sort of on her own. I mean, she
Independence.
sort of independent and has her own thoughts about life, her own philosophy, and that philosophy is pretty much what she lives by, and unfortunately thinks that other people's conduct is just sort of way out. I'm not saying this right. I know I'm not, but again, I said to you before we started, I'm not a very philosophical person, so you got the wrong guy to answer these.
Well, these are designed to be vague on purpose.
Yeah.
Some of them.
Yeah.
Okay, Aunt Chris, same question.
Yeah. And Christine is a very caring person too. She's adorable and she's very sweet to everybody, and a good mother, a good wife, was a good daughter.
Okay, let's jump forward. Meeting Barb. How'd you meet Barb?
Met Barb
When?
at bereavement group, and Grandma died in April 18th, and I met Barb. It was probably, I'm not exactly sure, but I think it was like August or maybe September. And
What did you admire? What's something
she walked in the room her first night. I had been going there, and it was my habit to go around the room when I went in and shake hands with everybody and say hello. And so she came in, and I did the same thing. And I walked over to her and I said, "You're alone here tonight. I think I'll sit with you," because she had this real sad look on her face. So she sat down, and during the course of the evening, I got up and got her a bottle of water and just sort of took care of her. And when the evening was over, she still kids me about it. I got up and just said goodbye and walked out, and didn't say a word to her. And but then the next week she came. No, I was home, and we had went out to dinner once a month. The whole group, and we had a list of everybody that was there and their phone numbers. And so, caring about her again, I just called her and said, "I want you to come to this dinner tonight." And I said that for her benefit, not for mine. And she said she was not going to come, but as a result of my phone call, she came. So I didn't get a chance to even talk to her that night, because all the guys were at one end of the table, all the women were at the other end. So when it was over, we walked out, and McDonald's next door. And I said, "I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to talk. Would you like to get a cup of coffee?" And she said, "Sure." So we went in and had a cup of coffee and sat there for over 2 hours talking, and she finally looked at me and said, "We have a lot in common."
So At what point was it?
So that was the beginning, and we
Was that when you just
started after that. Then we would sneak out to Culver's with nobody knowing it, and we'd get a Sunday or something, and a little snack at Culver's, and so that's how it started.
Yeah.
That's how it started.
What year were you and Barb married?
Well. 2006, November 2000, or 2000, wait a minute. 2006, yeah.
So you dated...
Yeah, Grandma died
Oh.
in 2005 and we got married in 2006.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. Got it. And what has that relationship, marriage been like?
Heaven.
Yeah. Why?
It's been wonderful.
Why?
Because we're so compatible in every way.
Yeah.
In every way. We don't fight. I mean, we just have, in fact, it's a joke with me because many times I'll say to her, let's have a fight this afternoon at 3 o'clock. Because we never fight.
Yeah.
We have words, but when we have words a half hour later, don't even think about what we said to each other.
Mm-hmm.
So it's total compatibility in every way. We like the same, everything the same. I mean, it's just amazing.
Yeah. So you've been going with Barb, now you're married, and you go back and forth to Florida and Chicago. What's that like? Why do you do that?
Why do I do that? Because of being in Chicago weather for my whole working career. It gave me an opportunity to get out of this weather and go somewhere that was a piece of heaven before the hurricane. There's a lot of damage now, but
Which hurricane is that?
Ian.
The one that
Hurricane
occurred
Ian,
this
the one
year.
that we just had.
Yeah.
So anyway,
And you're
and
supposed to
it's
be...
a healthy lifestyle. That's another thing that's so good about it. Is the fact I'm going to be 88 next month, and I think I'm in fairly good condition for my age.
What's your birthday?
I attribute part of it to being in Naples for about half of the time for the last 21 years.
Yeah.
My birthday is December 9th.
December 9th.
Yeah.
88 years old.
Yep.
Okay, let's go back to the philosophical questions. If you could go back to 20, what's something you would tell yourself to do? Knowing what you know now, go back to your 20-year-old self.
Yeah, what would I do different than what I did?
What would you tell him?
That's a good question because I know I should have gone to college, but I really never ever had. I had very bad experiences. I put it that way, trying to learn. I've always felt in the last few years it came to thinking about myself and the way I grew up that I had a learning disability. And really unable to read a textbook and study it and have it be able to remember what I had read to take a test. And what I used to do, what I had to do when I was going to school, both Penn State and DePaul, was I would, when I had a course, I would take the textbook and outline every single chapter in detail. And when it came test time, I would read that outline, read that outline, read that outline. I never opened the book. And literally, when I was finished with a course, I would say within 1 week, I had no idea what the course was about.
Really?
Yeah, pretty amazing.
Was that ever something you saw somebody about, diagnosed, or is it just something you noticed?
And I did continue getting better in school, getting better grades, but I just learned how to work the system with the way I did it. But I really seriously felt that I have this problem. I've talked to Uncle Matthew about it. He says, "Dad, I don't think so." And I said, "Yeah, I believe I do."
Yeah.
I said, somebody that can read, study the way I studied and not be able to remember it a week later even what the course is about. So, anyway.
Okay, these aren't in necessarily any order, but the last questions I have for you. What's been your biggest mistake with money?
Biggest mistake with money was, and you know the answer to this, it was in May of 2020, in the height of the pandemic, to liquidate 90% of my portfolio so that I didn't lose all my money so that my kids would have an inheritance. And the biggest mistake I ever did, because the market came back big time, and I would have today probably almost double what I had at that time as a result.
What has been your biggest mistake with people and relationships? I know that's vague.
I'm very sensitive with people, and that's why this is difficult, because I really admire relationships, and I do my best to really make people feel wanted by me. That's a hard question. I can't answer that.
Okay. What has been your greatest financial victory? Or something that you did to handle money well? Or responsibly?
Well, I do my own investing. I have a broker, J.P. Morgan, but I make all my own decisions. And I'd say just overall, what's the question again? Say it one more time.
What has been your greatest financial victory?
I'd say everything that I've accomplished from the day I walked into Quaker Oats in Chicago in 1965 to today. And I see where I am financially, and I'm at the peak of where I've been, and here I am at my age, and I haven't been digging into my savings. I've been growing my assets. So I'd say my whole life from 1965 on has been a major financial victory.
What's one thing you really admire about yourself?
Caring. That's it.
You place a lot of value on your relationships.
Relationships, yep.
Yeah. What is the most important thing to you morally?
Honesty.
Three generations from now, what do you hope or want your descendants to know about yourself?
It will never happen.
Why that?
Because I look back and I look at my kids, I look at my grandchildren, and particularly looking at your kids. Your kids, have my kids ever cared about previous generations? No, they haven't.
Well, now that we have, well, what do you want them to know? Because now we'll have a video record of you forever. What is one thing you would want them to know about you?
That my conduct in life and where I ended up financially to take my kids in the direction that they're able to go as a result of what I did with my life that I had something to do with their positions in life. And in my opinion, had a major part to do with their positions in life.
That same group, which statistically speaking will be a rather large group,
Yeah.
what would you want them to know as they grow up about the world?
The world is nothing without God and without accepting Lord Jesus Christ as their Lord.
That's all I have.
Okay.
Thanks for doing this.
Yep. Wasn't very good as far as I don't think I gave you good answers.
I think you did.
Do you?